November 2024. Welcome back, everybody. I hope you're doing well tonight. On this beautiful Thursday, fall day. My apologies. We'll get there. It's always something with these shows, right? We're going to go into the time machine, talk about the original headlines. I cooked up some pretty disappointing headlines for you tonight. This is a great show. It really is. If an extinction event could be called a great show, this is a great show. Fukushima worst case, beyond 250 kilometers could be an evacuation zone if the fuel in the spent fuel pool of number 4 reactor at the Fukushima Daiichi nuclear power plant melts. Covering the pool reactor with sand mixture was considered as a last resort. This was January. We're going to switch back over to that screen. And where's my trusty slide to? I don't mind the hand. I think that's it there. We're used to the slide. Let me see if I got this right. Making sounds, but moving after. That's pretty rough, Dana. I know. Let me fool with this. Now it's slow. It's pretty weird, eh? I wonder what's that sound about. Okay, so I'm going to change it because that's pretty... We'll figure it out next time. We'll figure it out next time. Should we go back to the hand? It's not making no noises. Here we go. Let's keep rolling. So if the number 4, if that happens to number 4, that happens to be number 4, by the way, basically half of Japan would be evacuated. So what they decided to do was pretend that it never happened. And last year on August the 24th, 2023, they took it to a different level where nothing happened. The International Atomic Energy Agency came out and spit on everybody on the planet and the 8 million species. Official Japanese government withheld the radiation forecasts to prevent causing panic. Do you know why nuclear power plants have some of them have like 140 sirens within 10 kilometers? So you can run away screaming, ah. It was kept forecast radioactive. Imagine calling something as lethal as radiation a forecast. Radioactive death plume in Japan was kept secret to avoid panic in the whole of society. So the plume looked like this in the Norwegian Institute for Air Research model after 468 hours, which is 19.5 days. And all the models worldwide agree with that. By the way, I'm Dana. Welcome. Hope you're doing well. You can call in at 709-589-4406. Am I missing? I thought that should be centered, not... it doesn't matter. Oh, I see. Let's keep going here. Bit of a problem here. See if I can fix it. Let me try to bring it up and see what happens. Oh, that was really bad. We'll fix it. So normally you got Normally you would have 4 people working equipment that I got. And if I had 4 hands, it would be okay, but I don't. So radiation fallout, the death plumes, were kept secret. And so when they seen this explosion at the number 3 reactor, the Fukushima Radioactive plant, the plutonium mixed oxide reactor, which is by toxicity, the emissions from it. So a typical reactor fuel pool is hemorrhaging radiation into the environment. And almost every single one of them is surrounded by farms. And this is why we have a poll tonight. Would the world be horrified if they knew all nuclear power plants are encircled by toxic radioactive plumes? See, brutal censorship again tonight. That's all they got, right? It must drive them crazy. They must lose their minds because somebody is honest, right? Somebody's out talking about them. They've never had that done to them before, and their reaction is just overload. I've been just under siege for over a decade straight now. They just hate me, eh? And I'm actually a good person. I'm better than all of them put together, and then some, right? They just hate me because they're scared of the truth, and they can't stand. They can't sit there and watch these shows. They can't read these headlines. So I put a poll up about farms, and I don't have a clue where all my farm stuff is too. Yeah, we'll find it. So weird. Does it again on my search, eh? Everybody knows I use the search constantly, right? So it looks like they attacked that. Here we go. I gotta reload this, and it'll take a second. Or 2 or 3 or 4. And so why is every nuclear power plant surrounded by farms? Anybody? Except for a couple of them, right? But almost every one of them is surrounded by farms. I gotta turn the volume down on all of this. But just let me run through this because it's kind of important. And because we have a poll tonight also to help articulate it. Would the world be horrified if they knew all nuclear power plants and dumps are encircled by toxic radioactive farms? So you only got 100 characters in the description. So it's very difficult to really, if you don't know much about the subject, it's kind of difficult to extrapolate. So what's going on here? Well, that's not the way I set that up. Hang on. Didn't I have myself coming in on a trajectory? Let's just try sliding in from the left, see how that plays out. That's a little quick, bear with me. 2 seconds. It matters anyway. Let's keep going here. Stretch and fade. We come in, just humor me. There we go. I'm going to come back in. That's pretty creepy. Let's do that. I like that. So why is every farm surrounded, or why is every nuclear power plant, nuclear dump, encircled by prime farmland? And I happened up on this accidentally. I wanted to get pictures from the air. Like I understood there was an awful lot going on, but I didn't appreciate it. And then decided I was going to do some weird like that. I was going to download as many pictures as I could of air shots of nuclear sites and see if I can see a pattern. Oh my goodness, did I ever see patterns? And because I do that with a lot of stories, I'll go through story after story after story in the same subject and look for patterns, right? Everybody probably does that, I'm sure. But for water and farms, I think we all agree on now that that's the consensus, right? And it's kind of hard to understand it because most of the pictures, you're lucky to find pictures like I got right there. But if you can get satellite pictures, wow, done it again, that's not the one I was looking for, so let's go back for one more. Boom. So if you got satellite pictures, it always shows up first, and tonight there's something else there. Woe's poor Dana. Here we go. There's just not enough time to do everything I want to do, unfortunately. So this is Sellafield, England. This is a nasty, terrible place. And the site over there is actually over 1,000 radioactive buildings. The whole site is disgusting. The whole coastline is disgusting. That whole English Channel is disgusting. This was a satellite picture, and you can really appreciate it. And you will see this same thing. You see this same particular attribute if you were to get satellite pictures of any nuclear power plant. And because all the fuel pools at the top of the buildings are hemorrhaging radiation. And you see those tall skinny stacks? They're the ones for venting. And like every time we cover a news cycle and they're talking about nuclear power plants, they'll have pictures. And it's typically close-up pictures, but it'll show farmland every single time. And if you're going to plan on building one, the model will be built in prime farmland, every one of them, and no matter which country you're looking at. Now, the fuel pools at the top of the buildings, reactors, are holding decades of reactor cores because you don't have a repository anywhere worldwide, let alone in Japan. And the fuel pools are where to put the reactor cores after 14 months. They take out a big percentage of the reactor core and put it at the top of the buildings, these boiling water reactors. It doesn't matter where it's to, they're putting them in pools, and they're going to be there for decades. And because they're still splitting atoms, they're very hot. And because they continue to split atoms at an enormous, inconceivable rate, they're up there for decades trying to cool down. Because otherwise they'll catch fire. You have to keep them under this special water. It boils off about 120,000 liters per pool a day. If you believe their numbers, the numbers are probably much higher. If the water stops circulating, it will melt down shortly after. So there's always adding water in, they're always evaporating water out. And the water is capturing the isotopes, the atoms, the anthropogenic man-made elements. And then they're they're so hot. It's what they call they're boiling off 120,000 liters in. There's around 1,000 fuel pools worldwide that do this, that we know about. Not counting national laboratories and stuff, universities. And it's boiled up. The skinny stacks are much taller because they want the radiation to fall on a trajectory off-site. And so this is why almost every single nuclear plant, unless it's in the city, is surrounded by farms. There's a couple that were situated because of real estate. They lacked any real estate, and so they put it in certain places. But the preferred, like the Canadian Bruce Power or the Nuclear Waste Management Organization in Canada, when they were looking at getting rid of their nuclear waste, they bought 1,500 acres of prime farmland situated right in the middle of a massive area of farmland. And the route there for 1,000 miles is farmland on both sides of the road. And then the middle of the farmland is all they're going to use. They want the rest of the farms to be land. They're only going to use 250 acres out of the 1,500 acres, which is, square kilometer, for the facility to repackage everything when it gets here so everything is vented on the way. This is standard, right, worldwide. So, and they're also in prime farmland. It's not an accident. This is murder. They're murdering you. And this is not a crime, though. It's not illegal to murder you with radiation. The Congress, the parliaments, the senates worldwide don't have the authority to make it illegal either. Only the non-regulatory agencies, nuclear regulatory agencies, clearly are a non-regulatory agency, have the authority to make it illegal to poison you with radiation. That came out in a loss in a criminal case. Just let me see if I can find that. Such a struggle to get everything back up and running. It's just exhausting, eh? I've been through a lot. At the end of last week was a tough time in my life. And we still got to get here and go to war. And they hacked the shit out of my equipment. And so we still got to go to war, though. I'm going to assume my keyboards are screwing up or something. Try not to think of the worst right away. There we go. I got another set of keyboards I'll plug in for the next show. So I was reading this story, 2020, 2019, can't remember. I think 2020 or something. A protester and ex-candidate to plead guilty to seeking nuclear material, but would not get prison under the deal. Would not get prison. So he's two lawyers. He was arrested for trying to buy polonium-210, which only the governments have access to. And radium. They only have access to radium. Now, 60 years ago, anybody can get radium. You can get all kinds of radium. Radium lipstick, radium toothpaste, radium soap, radium hand cleaner, radium polish, radium suppositories, you name it. It was over the counter anywhere. Grocery stores, you name it. If you had that same amount now and wrapped it in conventional explosives, it would be called a dirty bomb, right? So they put all this, they destroyed all these people. All those older graveyards are incredibly radioactive because of that. And all antique furniture has to be anything antique has to be treated with skepticism and checked out with a significant Geiger counters before you should purchase them. Same thing with old photos. Following the series of communication began with the undercover FBI agents. So they were looking for a Patsy. So Bugney and Ryan said Ryan was trying to get it to kill himself and then blame it. It ended up getting blamed on the government, right? But in March, his lawyers Bugney and Myers filed a series of motions to dismiss the indictment against Ryan for trying to get his hands on nuclear material, right? Asserting that the nuclear terrorism charge under which he was charged is unconstitutional, in part because Congress lacked the authority to criminalize poisoning with radioactive substances. It's crazy, right? Only the Nuclear Regulatory Commission has that. If you read the rest of the story, that's what you find out. And that's true worldwide. So why isn't an industry, because Congress has made over 3,000 chemicals illegal to use against you, but they can't make thousands of isotopes, anthropogenic man-made isotopes, illegal. And the reason is because they couldn't use it on you in the hospitals, because that would be a crime, right? If they killed you in the hospital with radiation, or if you got injured because of the radiation in the hospital, that would be a crime. And that the nuclear power plants can't contain it. The fuel pools are always hemorrhaging. And so when you look at these farmlands, you don't have to ask yourself, do they know that all the radioactive fallout from the fuel pools that are landing in these farms is harmful, because they've got millions and millions of studies going back as long as you like, as the nuclear industry existed, showing this is a terrible idea. It's a terrible idea. Putting nuclear... So foliage uptake of radioactive materials in strawberries. Using plants as a monitor for radioactive fallout. Foliage and root uptakes of cesium, strontium, zirconium in tomatoes, in potatoes, and fruit trees, in fruit plants, in wheat, tree root systems. They studied every facet of this verbatim, over and over and over. And they know that this is absolutely insane to build a nuclear power plant in prime farmland or anywhere where there's fresh water, or anywhere on Earth, because this stuff is each nuclear power plant produces a massive plume every day. It's invisible. You can't see it. Now, certain times you can't see the plumes, right? But right, nice cold weather, the hot stuff is coming out, it will produce little plumes. But is it a coincidence that every nuclear power plant is surrounded by farms when they know how harmful the emissions are going to be? If you think what they're doing is evil, give me a thumbs up. If you think that they're heartless monsters, give me a thumbs up. And then, why are they growing food alongside the 1-ton bags of radiation, millions of 1-ton bags of radiation in nuclear wasteland? Why was 14 prefectures banned by 55 countries for a decade? Because they know the food, right, is going to be covered in radiation and uptake in interior, not just exterior, but also internal. So they know. The Japan government gave the speedy radiation forecast to the U.S. military, not their own systems. But the forecast, this model in the top left-hand corner, is based on 20 days. It gets thicker and thicker and thicker. It's a continuous plume that wraps around the entire planet. It's unbelievable what they've done to us, what they continue to do, they've been doing for 80 years, and is now going to choke the entire planet to death, because radioactive fallout is toxic to everything with replicating cells. So no matter what they do, what the nuclear industry or universities or academics do, they can't stop the destruction of everything with replicating cells, because that's the ultimate outcome. If you never had a nuclear meltdown, nuclear will still exterminate all the species just from the emissions from the fuel pools of over 1,000 fuel pools worldwide. The government hid the simulation because it was very, very bad, Japan professor. showed a serious contamination over a wide area. So there was dissenting voices originally. They were pretty far between. There was a lot more pro-nuclear nut jobs out there. And so the journalist job, you end up seeing a journalist, not just the insane nuclear scientists, nuclear academics, the pro-nuclear lobbying groups. These people are insane. They have lots of money. They dress really well. They have nice cars. They have everything on a plate handed to them their whole life. They were born with that. And all they got to do is cut your throats and everybody else's throat, and they get to enjoy their life. And that works for them. They only get the jobs, though, because they're missing a certain part of their brain, right? They don't have... Nuclear fuel rods in the number 4 spent fuel pool are confirmed to be damaged. The first time damaged to reveal at any pool. This is reactor 4. Can you notice? Now the building should be a 19-story building, 65-meter, 190-foot building. And this is all that's left of it is the stump on the ground. That's it. Now officially, they got all the fuel out of the building. So what they done was they built this contraption over the building. They put these giant panels on it. And then they claimed everything was hunky-dory on the inside. Secret worst scenario was reactor explosion at number 1 and the spent fuel pool at number 4 reactor drying up. Well, spent fuel pool would have been slightly above the structure they put there to hoodwink everybody. So it would have been up there at the top of the buildings. The buildings are completely gone. That reactor 4 is 100% gone. And they came out and claimed that it's not gone. So that's a big problem because they can't walk back that lie. Just hang with me for a bit. Just hang with me for one bit. Just for a minute. So what you're looking at, the building doesn't physically touch each other. Because the building would collapse if it touched each other, right? I'm still far from having, it's going to take another 2 weeks maybe to get everything back to where it's supposed to be. There are cases. But imagine how much contempt they got for you and the species on this planet. They work really hard all these years of covering this up, and then there's just this one thorn in their side right now. That's us. It's just a matter of time for it to kill me, I'm sure. They just want me to go away. And they made that very clear to me many times. They assigned a bunch of stalkers to me from Japan. They will call and interrupt the show. Just having a hard time finding my old picture, and I don't know. Problem is I have so much, I don't know where everything is too. Exactly everything. And I'm just looking for one picture, and I can't find it, so I might as well give up, I suppose. Because I'm like the Japanese, I give up. If it's too hard, why try, right? The problem is, I have everything I open up, there's a whole bunch of memories there because we cover so much over the years, right? Anyway, looks like I'm too pathetic to find it tonight. One more try. I'll take it. So why are they pretending they're in the building to your left? Now I got to copy this and paste it in a place where I know I can find it. So I don't go through this again anytime in the future. Here we go. Off we go. So you got all the media, you can't trust them. You got all the universities, you definitely don't want to trust them. You can't trust the journalist. It's a pretty grim scenario. It's the worst case scenario is when all your universities, all your medias, all your key government agencies, and all of their friends and families and employees, the military, there's the mining companies, the stock exchange. The stock exchange are just ruthless monsters. They come up with a new scam every 2 or 3 weeks. They artificially inflate the stocks for a week. Then all the investors will throw their money at it. And a few days later, when the pro-nuclear sold out their shares after making a big profit, the people who invested sell their shares and lose their backs, their life savings. Nuclear industry comes back in, buys those stocks right away. 2 weeks later, rinse and repeat. Scientists, there really is no containment at the Fukushima reactors. Right, so those journalists were saying they were above those 2 fuel pools at the top of the building, of that building over there, which there's 100, like pretending you're at the top of this building and everything is perfect. That takes a special kind of crazy, don't it? Tell me I'm wrong. Prove I'm wrong. Does that not dictate that the people that are willing to do it are not fit to be working in the capacities that they're working in, right? Right, the pretty journalists and crazy scientists. This is what we see over and over now. Over the last 80 years, we see this routine constantly. Cost of admitting the truth about Fukushima is so great that Japan won't admit it. It's enough to make you question whether to live in Tokyo. Well, the journalist's job, right? The journalist's job is to make the nuclear scientists look like they're human, like me and you. We breathe air and drink water. But that's backwards. So this building, what they done is they constructed this contraption off-site. It's a contraption that is meant to, its only purpose is to manipulate you. And then it doesn't physically touch the building. It doesn't physically touch the building. because the building is too fragile for it to touch, right? You can't touch that building. They cleaned up, with the homeless and the destitute around it, built this contraption. They put these big panels on it, and then they pretend that they're inside the top, that they're pretending that they're up over there, and that everything is great. They're getting the fuel at the fuel pool, and if they touch each other, though, it could go really south. But there's nothing left of the building. There's this little stump on the ground, but the guts are hanging out of it. There is nothing. This is no longer a structure, a building. Like I call it, the only word I can come up with for it is a stump left over. And so stump usually implies it's just a little stub left over from a firecracker, big massive firecracker, 190-foot firecracker. And so the journalist's job is to lead you away and pretend that everything is hunky-dory. That's not supposed to be their job. Their job is not supposed to be do that. Fuel is damaged in 2 of the Fukushima fuel pools. Said TEPCO advisor, this is the horse's mouth itself, which was bankrupt at this time, right? Was nationalized, taken over by the Japanese government. 150 billion atoms per square meter of cesium-137 at Unit 3. Like, it's thousands and thousands and thousands of sieverts. You go close, that's a medusa. Just, if you pop your head around the corner and look at it, you got a lethal dose and you're going to die. Not tomorrow either, that day. It's a medusa. In every sense of that word, right? So they took it, they leveled it out, and then they put this contraption over it. And right, so like you can count on a nuclear scientist to cook up. Well, let's pretend it's not melted down. Let's put this contraption over it. And we'll just get the journalists, we'll get the pretty journalist to tell them everything is okay. That's how this played out, right? Worst case scenario map showed Japan was cut in half by evacuation, by forced evacuation. Half of Japan. The whole Japan should be abandoned. Like, you can't breathe the air down there. You can't drink the water. And we know this because the water reclamation facilities, they can't get rid of the sediment because it's too radioactive. And that they picked up 30 million one-ton bags. Like, anybody who brings their children there should be charged with child abuse. A felony too, right? They should go to jail for 20, 30 years for poisoning their children on purpose because they're too close-minded to believe the truth when it's told to them. They're very dangerous parents that'll do that. We see a lot of that. We see in the Olympics where people let their healthy, incredible, talented, healthy children go into a nuclear wasteland so they can get a piece of metal that was useless to them once the Olympics was over. You get a bunch of random people saying, "Oh wow, you're from the Olympics." When you see that person, that didn't make them wealthy. Fukushima just why throw your health away for something that's what's more important, a piece of metal, Olympic gold medal, or bronze or silver, or just being there, or your health? If you agree with the latter, give me a thumbs up. Fukushima Daiichi worker saw black smoke that came from the common spent fuel pool's chimney. Now, the common spent fuel pool was right behind reactor 4 and right behind reactor 3. Well, what you're looking at is the stumps of reactor 4 and the stump of Medusa reactor 3. Well, reactor 4 is a Medusa too. Don't get me wrong. And number 2 and number 1. And so I couldn't find the pictures I've already had zoomed in, clipped out. So that's the common spent fuel pool. That's beyond reactor 4 at the top of the page, number 3 just off the left center. That's the common spent fuel pool. It's on the same road, the same height, the same level as the other reactors, right across the street. Now remember what the tsunami, when it came through, the tsunami was real, right? Just done absurd damage, like major damage for 600 miles of the coastline. So the common spent fuel pool right here, why is that pixelated out? This was drone footage. It was clearly taken shortly, the first week probably, or the first couple of days, and was released on 2021, the year of the 10th anniversary, January of that year. I found it on a Chinese site that I had translated to English about Fukushima, which is, I do that all the time, right? The story wasn't making any sense. It didn't make any reference to the links that were below it that was translated, which was unusual too. So I clicked on the link and went over to it went to TEPCO's website. And I downloaded 739 pictures. Maybe we should do another show on that. Sunday, maybe. When we do our first show next week is on Sundays. Maybe we should come out and do all of these pictures again. And this time, I'll just use the raw original pictures, and we'll just zoom in ourselves on each picture instead of me doing that before that. They're very high quality pictures, right? Nobody's ever covered. You will never see these pictures anywhere else. There's a lot of pictures on my site you'll never see anywhere else. And especially those zoomed in shots I showed you earlier. And there's more coming up. And so this stuff here, nobody's ever shared. It was just a Japanese site. They didn't actually show you any of the pictures. They linked you over to TEPCO's website where you had to download the pictures in the compressed files and then uncompress them yourself, right? And it was 739, I think it was. Don't quote me. We actually got 2 videos dedicated to these pictures, just to these pictures. One from 2021 and one from earlier this year or late last year. I can't remember. I think it was earlier this year, was it? Like I said, we cover so much. All it takes is coolant to stop circulating at the spent fuel pools number 4 for extensive fuel damage to occur. It doesn't have to leak, crack, or fall from the fuel for fuel to overheat. So the fuel doesn't have to shift, nothing has to change. All it has to do, the water stops circulating. That's it. Now, the tsunami that ran through that site, and everywhere else, was like a big wood chipper, right? So there was no water circulating. So the common spent fuel pools, that's all they do is circulate water. They just store fuel in pools from 6 reactors. And the numbers we're looking at, according to them, is like if you go back pre-Fukushima and look at the numbers that they were using before that, not post-Fukushima because they downplayed everything in increments over the first several years. And then that was the consensus after that. But the consensus before Fukushima is the numbers we typically use. And so the common spent fuel pool would have had close to 11 million pounds. And all the reactor buildings have fuel pools stored at the top of them in 2 fuel pools. Now when the buildings are gutted all the way to the ground, and you got media coming out pretending they're on top of the building, then the fuel pools are gone. So that tells you the fuel. Every academic seen that picture went, yeah, there's no fuel pool. there's supposed to be 2 fuel pools, and the reactor core was 2/3 full. They don't take everything out of the reactor core unless they're going to do a refit on the whole plant. They weren't doing that. They were doing maintenance, which is typical. They might do 11,000 maintenances for every fuel exchange after 14 months. They don't take the fuel out. They only take out about 1/3 of the fuel out, and then they'll load it up with fresh fuel that hasn't gone through a chain reaction yet. And then they'll bring in 1,000, 1,500 blue-collar workers because they don't want cancer rates to skyrocket years later for the employees. Because once you open the reactor up, then how do you contain it if it's opened up? You can't, right? And they do up to 10, 11,000 maintenances on the site at the same time, or the building at the same time. So the reactor core had 2/3 minimum in it of hot fuel and 1/3 of new fuel. But then at the top of the building were the fuel pools, which is 4 times higher than the stump you see left there. So when the tsunami came in, it stopped circulation at the fuel pool, common spent fuel pool, and everything else. Every other reactor along the coastline too. And so this clearly had a meltdown. There's no other reason to have everything pixelated out. The entire building is pixelated out. On the back of it, you're seeing containers from transport trucks pushed up by the tsunami, right? Tsunami ran right through that site. Let me show you one of those pictures right quick. And there's no such thing as quick, I know, when we're doing this. It's going to be what it's going to be. You can't rush a story like this. It deserves the utmost respect. So the tsunami ran right through the plant, right? This is all the site itself. And it's hard to appreciate what that, like, because the plants are built pretty tough. It's coming in at 400 and 500 miles per hour, hits the coastline, rises up, slows down, but then there's other waves right behind it that'll piggyback over it. So when it goes into a community which has no integrity, it's like a big wood chipper went through it, right? The plant is much more resilient, but it's not immune, right? Would be like Chernobyl on steroids if the spent fuel catches fire, said a nuclear engineer who worked on an identical plant. Americans have 74, I think it is, identical plants. Color, everything's identical. It's the exact same schematics. Each reactor holds 3,450 spent fuel assemblies. The fuel assemblies got 100 fuel rods. Each rod is 18 pounds and they're 12 feet long. So their percentage of them are going to be stored at the common spent fuel pool. Why is the common spent fuel pool completely pixelated out? And reactor 6 and the pump house was completely pixelated out in these pictures too. Nuclear engineer, far more radioactivity inside the spent fuel ponds. These are not conventional ponds, right? These, the toxicity in these ponds is something else. Because the fuel is still splitting atoms, so the water is completely trillions and trillions and trillions, hundreds and billions of trillions per liter. And it's boiling off. So the common spent fuel pool is boiling off water too, right? This much more water than the buildings are because it has much more in the buildings. And so if it doesn't get cooling, this is expected to go nutty right away, right? Quicker than the other spent fuel pools. But then we're talking about a tsunami, a significant, well, one of the biggest earthquakes in history, built way past its capacity. Why would you build it on a fault line where you're 60 miles away from tectonic plates that do that with a thousands of years legacy of tsunamis coming in? That coastline would typically envelop the entire site, submerge it. And then where there's 1,000 earthquakes a year on that coastline because of tectonic plates. Why would you build it right there? And then the prevailing winds they know are going to blow to United States. And Japan used to send balloon bombs, what they call, I believe the name of it. Well, what they were doing was they had balloons, rice paper balloons, that were carrying 20 pounds or 50 pounds of conventional bombs. And they knew the trajectory would land over America. And there's all kinds of stories of people finding these years later unexploded, and stories of it when they showed up exploding. And when the bombs they had sophisticated devices, but were rudimentary in many ways, but were definitely sophisticated when you think about how rudimentary they were, that they worked, that would release the bombs. Right? It was bizarre how accurate they were, with such as, because no engines, you can't hear it coming, you can't see it coming. And they just splattered America with these bombs just blowing up random across America. But a lot of it was set up for the coastlines because it's where the population was. So the common span fuel pool is on the same street as reactor 1, 2, 3, and 4, for instance. It's right across from reactor 4. It's in towards land, right? But it's, they're still on the coastlines. So the tsunami went right through this site. Top Japan official evacuating Tokyo was a contingency, not worst case scenario. Implementing cost-effective measures was the proper response. So that's him right here, I think, right there. Yeah, that's him. Evacuating Tokyo was not a contingency. Naito Kan, the prime minister at the time, was considering evacuating 30 million people in metropolitan Tokyo, which has grown now to 36 million, isn't it? Metropolitan Tokyo. So instead, what they decided was just let them drink the poison water and be damned. And there's 865,000 extra cancers in the first year. Not everybody got health care, not everybody's diagnosed. Cancer isn't the only thing, but I mean, that's a staggering premonition of what's coming. Analysts, if the truth is admitted about Fukushima, it would have broken the backbones of Japan's economy. If the truth was admitted about Fukushima. And of course, I show you a lot of that right now. If the truth was admitted about the farms, every nuclear power plant worldwide is surrounded by farms. So if the truth was admitted about Fukushima, it broke the backbone of Japan. So the Western media, Australia, United Kingdom, United States, Canada, all of them came out and pretended or just regurgitated this narrative that they were in the spent fuel pools of a building that no longer exists, that was housing around 8 reactor cores. I mean, what does that say about us as a society that because I mean, that's a pretty big risk. Like if this picture went viral, can you imagine the absurd damage to the media worldwide? Now, I created this picture 10 years ago. And I was like, I got him now. Wait till I get this picture out there. I remember how excited I was. And here I am 10 years later, still like, I got him now. Well, somewhere in the next decade. What a pathetic planet. It's only pathetic because the journalists have betrayed us in the ultimate ways. Nothing but contempt for you. That's what they have. Wall Street Journal. Many in Fukushima exposed to radiation well above the permitted levels. New research shows. Survey did not look at internal exposures. Hey, Chang, how come you didn't look at internal exposure? Shut up, nuclear proctologist. Many in Fukushima exposed to radiation above permitted levels. In the 4 months following the tsunami and nuclear detonations, Residents of Nami, Lydia, parts of Katawamata, whatever you call that place. The vice president of Fukushima Medical University. The Fukushima Medical University conspired with the International Atomic Energy Agency and took control of all the health, the voice, and everything else. And that university shouldn't exist. That university, these people could easily be convicted of genocide and omnicide, but certainly genocide. And the buildings where they've committed these atrocious crimes against humanity should be taken apart. They should all be held accountable. And in Japan, they have the death penalty. These people deserve the death penalty for what they've done. It's impossible to argue against it. And it should be broadcasted live on YouTube as a deterrent to all the other nuclear degenerates on this planet. Last sentence of the article, though most important, the survey did not look at internal exposures. It didn't look at radiation taken into the human body through contaminated air, water, or food. The Fukushima Medical University didn't look at internal, only external. We've seen so many examples of that from the scientists and the academics and the universities, and then the media is on top of the buildings pretending they're in the buildings, and that the scientists' job is to cut your throat, not help you. It's to lie to you, manipulate you, deceive you, and make you complacent. Make you very, very complacent. Hi, everybody. Welcome, everybody. Let me get back after it. Because all I can do is once in a while is what have we got down here? Is glance at the comments, because if I start reading it, I'll lose track of what I'm trying to do tonight. I'm pretty good though, because I lay out my story, and then my story gets thicker. And the problem with this story is there's no facet of this story that's not alarming. There's no facet of this story that's not fear-mongering, per se, right? That can't be misinterpreted as fear-mongering, I should say. I'm not fear-mongering, I'm just telling the story. And it's so salacious, it sounds like fear-mongering, right? Would the world be horrified if you knew all nuclear plants are encircled by toxic radioactive farms? Because all the fuel pools are hemorrhaging radiation. The fuel pools are splitting atoms. Say there's 8 reactor cores in a fuel pool. Well, each reactor core was capable of producing, by splitting atoms, enough energy to power 1 million homes and businesses, right? And so after 14 months, that's full of microscopic cracks, trillions and trillions of microscopic cracks, which allows the radiation to hemorrhage even more from the fuel rods. And the thing about a fuel rod is it's perpetual. It never stops producing the atoms, and that's why it's dangerous forever. Oh, well, they don't know what to do with it. It's so toxic forever. So people think about it, well, if I get close to it, there's this energy that will harm me, right? And it'll melt your organs. But the radioactive fallout is the unknown danger, and because you can't contain it. Because it produces so much... The radioactive emissions are so volatile that it will displace the oxygen. If you introduce oxygen back in, it'll actually detonate. Or you introduce a spark, it'll detonate. But oxygen introduced back into the environment after it displaces it, so everything is vented up these tall, small stacks. And this is why we are seeing epidemics of Alzheimer's and dementia and autism and diabetes and Down syndrome and schizophrenia, And health problems are the real issue. They're real because your body gets the anthropogenic man-made atoms inside of it. It sequesters in your muscles, your organs, and your bones. It's pulsing energy at the speed of light every second. Each atom in your body, anthropogenic man-made atom, is attacked viciously by white blood cells for the rest of your life. And every time it pulses energy, which is every second, it destroys chromosomes and DNA and cells, just millions of them. Your body has to repair that every second. It can't keep up with that. So as you bioaccumulate more and more and more, you have less oxygen, less nutrition in your body. And so now you're inebriated. You're acting impaired. You're theoretically impaired. Not the type you'll get on a breathalyzer, but with the same attributes. Because what alcohol does to you is, what makes you inebriated is the fact that the alcohol is just like radiation, but alcohol will leave your body, right? Lose its ability to keep doing that, whereas radiation doesn't. So alcohol displaces your oxygen, your red blood cells, your oxygen molecules, and that's why you become inebriated from lack of oxygen. But it's very temporary, right? And if you're drinking hard and you stop and you're getting really drunk, right? You're like, oh crap, I'm in trouble. And you stop for like 20 minutes, then you're kind of like, okay, well, maybe I'm going to try another drink, right? Because your body now has built up oxygen. But when it comes to radiation, your body can't do that. These are explosions going off in your body. Your body has to repair that and attack the source every second and try to build a tumor around it. This way you've seen people with multiple tumors. And report, reactor number 1 exploded after a full meltdown. So reactor 1 exploded after a full meltdown. That's pretty weird, isn't it? The way it... Let me put something else there. Let's get away from the stretch and fade. Slide in B over. I got no idea what this one is. Let me try. We'll try this one for a few goes. Oh. Like a rabbit, eh? That's pretty weird. Similar patterns of disaster befell the reactor 2 and 3. Just a single nuclear meltdown is catastrophic to everything on the planet. Reactor after reactor after reactor melting down is the worst case scenario. We've never heard tell of anything like it, let alone seen anything like this. We never ever seen projections of this. We never seen Hollywood even suggest that was conceivable, or I've never heard of a connotation that suggested this was even possible, right? Or maybe I did, I don't know. Because I've been at this line before Fukushima, and I think I might have actually asked that question. What would you do if you got multiple reactors melting down and fuel pools melting down? And the fuel pools blowing up is just the most surreal thing. And the common spent fuel pool. Japan confirms full meltdown at all 3 reactors. But I showed you reactor 4. That is a meltdown. So that's 4 meltdowns. I showed you the common spent fuel pool is completely pixelated out. Clearly that's going to be a meltdown. And the reason we know that is because you have to have water circulating. They couldn't have water circulating because lethal doses everywhere. There was nothing to connect power to at the reactors, for instance. There was no fuel pool. Right, you see the red framing of a cement pump truck? They're using to pump water on top of reactor 4. That was to manipulate you, to make you complacent. The nuclear industry, all the nuclear industry participated in this lie. Every nuclear academic on the planet participated in that lie. Every nuclear scientist, every journalist, every media outlet on the planet participated in that lie. And so that seems surreal to some people, I would imagine. But explain to me why they're pretending they're on a building that doesn't exist. Rationalize that. Give me a call at 709-589-4444. 4406 here in Canada. Explain it to me. I want to hear your version of it. Why did they pretend they were in a building that doesn't exist? What's to be gained by pretending the building that doesn't exist? By denying people the ability to get out of harm's way? How did that make the world a better place? Rapid meltdown happened at reactor 2 and 3, indicated by the black smoke at number 3. Well, reactor 3, I got one of the pictures of its explosions. It wasn't a rapid well, it was a rapid meltdown that which created the hydrogen, which created the explosion, right? The hydrogen is created. That's the confirmation of the nuclear meltdown. So you have a nuclear meltdown, and then you have an explosion. That's how this works. And we have lots of evidence now, post-Fukushima, to back up that assertion. Unburned MOX fuel, plutonium mixed oxide fuel, has already gone through a chain reaction. So the stuff from the fuel pools is 2 billion times more toxic than industrial poison. And every nuclear power plant, except for a few, are surrounded by farms. And I showed a bunch of that earlier. And the stuff that's landing on them and assimilated into them is 2 billion times more toxic than industrial poison and can't be destroyed. When reactor 3 exploded. When you look at the original footage of reactor 3, there's nothing left. It's like a campfire where there's a couple of pieces of wood, 3/4 burnt, but just it went out on its own, right? Or this thing. So reactor 3 and 4 lost all their inventories immediately. Within a couple of days, everything was cooked off. And just a small, tiny fraction of it was blasted down in the building. The majority of it was blasted out of the building or burnt out of the building because it burns at 9,000 degree Fahrenheit temperatures. And the fuel pools, reactor cores at the top of the buildings, that's reactor 3 to your left. You can clearly see the fuel pools, everything is gone. The building is smashed. These buildings are unbelievably thick and wide. They're 150 feet wide, for instance. These are massive structures. A nuclear expert, powerful explosion at reactor number 3 may have been from an prompt criticality in the spent fuel pool. So the explosion at reactor 3, when you look at what's left, was a criticality, yeah, because it was a detonation in the spent fuel pool because it had the water wasn't circulating, and because of the plutonium mixed oxide. Explosion at Fukushima Unit 3 drove the nuclear fuel out of the storage pool, and they always denied a second pool at the top of these buildings, which was typically used for transfer and extra storage. But because you don't have a repository, and because the buildings were 38 years old at that time, then they have decades, and it changed the fuel every 14 months, so they had a lot of reactor cores in the pools. And because you don't have a repository, let alone anywhere else, certainly not in Japan or anywhere else, then that inventory was lost also. And we know that because when we look at the remains of the building, or we look at the original shots of the buildings, like that or like this, every academic on the planet was aware that that was gone. And so they participated in crimes against humanity by remaining silent. And that's why the rest of the reactors blew up, is because they remained silent. Scattered up to 2 miles away, and the explosions, when you look at the explosions, remember this little tiny building back here is 190 feet tall. So in the videos, you'll actually see the fuel pools and the reactor cores falling back down to Earth. And it's really... It was a nuclear explosion at reactor number 3. I believe the fuel rods were blown out of the spent fuel pool. And again, right, there was some dissenting voices originally, right? But the evidence like this, and reactor 4, for instance, is one of the reasons why France had put out this model, and this model is based on 31 days, all the way up to 31 days, or wait, I'm sorry, 15 days. It's 1 million to 10 million atoms of cesium-137. That's what that plume model is based on, per cubic meter of air. And cesium-137 will pulse energy 600 feet. So through your neighbor's house and through your house, and then destroy the cells in your body over and over and over and over. But the plume is so big, it covers the entire planet. And then you have to extrapolate what is a plume, like what else is going to be in it. It's not just going to be cesium-137. But at 1 million, this is the French government, at 1 million to 10 million atoms, that is something we've never considered before. And so this would have destroyed, because cesium-137, by the way, is a gamma. That'll also go in your thyroid glands. Not just your thyroid glands, but it also will be attracted to you. The thyroid glands of insects and birds, mammals and animals, and all species, and humans, obviously. But it's also, because it pulses, has so much energy, it's full body X-rays when it's ricocheting off the betas, the neutrons, the alphas. That's what they call an X-ray, right? Because the explosions won't mix. They're exploding almost at the speed of light, each atom, like a visible snowstorm. Think of a snowstorm where there's all this ricocheting of explosions, where they come out to hit each other and then they change direction because they bounce, what's known as a braking effect. That causes a full body X-ray effect throughout the forest and the biosphere. Also, like the whole biota is getting full body X-rays. So they stop reproducing. It sterilizes all the very, very, everything is vulnerable to this stuff. Nothing with replicating cells has autoimmune trigger to defend against it. I believe the fuel rods were blown out of the spent fuel pool. And so when you look at it, clearly everything was blown out of the building, let alone the spent fuel pool. They were ejected straight up. This was 2021 media. This was Rupert Winfield Hayes from the BBC pretending he was above the fuel pool looking down on top of it. But nobody's going on top of reactor 3 because first off, it doesn't even exist anymore. But if you went on top of that stump, by the time you got within 100 feet of it, you got a lethal dose. You drop dead. Curium and plutonium. Curium is the biggest byproduct of the radiated fuel rod, by the way, not the cesium. So anything you see in cesium is significantly more curium. Curium, you need lead shielding 20 times thicker than you do for the plutonium. Plutonium killed all the animals in all the studies. Outside the Fukushima plant indicated nuclear explosion at reactor number 3. The broken spent nuclear fuel rods may have been scattered. No, they were scattered. It's official. Fukushima was hit with a full-blown meltdown. And a pool of radioactive lava could be melting its way out. Well, like reactor 1 and the reactor core itself appeared to went China syndrome deep into the earth. The fuel pool cooked off on the 12th, the day after the tsunami. Reactor 2 burnt constantly for days. But it wasn't a building inside the building because the building would have caught fire with these enormous temperatures. It had gone China syndrome right away. And that's why the building blew out one of its panels, but the reactor, its fuel itself went China syndrome. It burnt, and we showed a lot of that last night. For the first time, officials admit of a shortage of workers at the Fukushima. TEPCO promises additional efforts to get more. Shortage of workers, the homeless, the destitute, the victims of society, the immigrants who don't speak the language. Like, if you went up to a nuclear scientist, you wanted to hire a nuclear scientist. So they came to the job interview, and you say, well, we're going to send you to Japan. We want you to walk into that and get us some samples. They would get up and run out of the office. They'd be looking everywhere. They would probably pick up a bottle and break it, turn their back, and work their way out to the front door and run away screaming. And they're not going there. They get it. They know what's going down. BBC reveals homeless people cleaning reactors in modern slavery in Japan's nuclear industry 14 years ago. Well, it's not that they reveal it. It was just they were trying to do mitigation damage to other people that had put out documentaries showing it. Because media is nobody's friend. It really isn't. And Forbes, which is brutal pro-nuclear, even said this is outrageous. And Forbes is disgusting what they done. It's disgusting. Homeless people are being sold to companies and put to work on Fukushima radiation. Well, they were making $11 a day, right? The homeless, the destitute, the victims of society, immigrants who don't speak the language. Well, like Wikipedia is going to cut your throat for anything on Fukushima. Anywhere you go, basically, going to cut your throat. And so each reactor building had around 3,450 assemblies at the top of the buildings, which is around 6 million pounds per building. And the common span fuel pool had around close to 11 million pounds. People taken from movie theaters in the United Kingdom are forced to go into the reactors to deal with the burning fuel rods. They had all kinds of nuclear plant employees. They wouldn't volunteer. They had nuclear universities. None of them volunteered. They had Donneray, nuclear fuel reprocessing facility, Sellafield. None of them volunteered. So they went to the theaters. The police did with buses and took the people from the back rows of the theater. Women, minorities, homeless, and prisoners are used by the nuclear industry for the most dangerous work. Fukushima Prefecture was offering free homes to pregnant women. I actually got that story is here somewhere, but I don't know if we'll make it that far. I'm still going pretty slow here. I'm running out of steam. So, UN officials astounded the homeless are taken to work in Fukushima ready to die. At the end of the month, they're left with no money, but they only make $11 a day. Not an hour, but a day. They end up in debt to the employees because the employees are just robbing them. They're the homeless and the destitute. They go round them up at the bus shelters and that and drive them to Fukushima, right? Then they give them they tell them it's free accommodations, but it's coming after a paycheck. And so when it's time for the paycheck, they give them $11 a day. But it doesn't really matter because they're going to die shortly after. So a lot of times they don't even get, because, we'll get the money to you next week, and they don't live that long. Nuclear slaves at Fukushima. Workers have debts paid off, forced to stay as indentured servants. Foreign workers may soon be needed at the plant. And 2015, for 6 days, we went to war because they wanted to bring in blue-collar workers to work at Fukushima, which I'm sure they done. But the problem is, right, they don't speak Japanese, so they don't understand the signs, nothing. They're the last people who want working at these places, and that's the first people they're going to try to hire. We got stories already paid homeless people $2,000 just to walk over in a little area. He said it was the easiest money I ever made. And then he probably died that week or that week later. I mean, there's places in that site they still don't have control of today because of where the fuel landed, they bulldozed it into the ground. Shortage of nuclear workers becoming more real. These are the homeless and the destitute, not nuclear scientists or nuclear academics or nuclear engineers or university and educated students, but workers. These are the homeless and the destitute and the victims of society and the immigrants who don't speak the language, the voiceless, the most vulnerable and most incapable of doing a job because of substance abuse, because of depression. More and more companies have closed, the personal dose limits are exceeded. Mentally disabled are working at Fukushima. That's the actual heroes. Many men are forced to go to the plant. Homeless are treated like disposable people. Well, they are considered the disposable people. The nuclear industry, and has always done that too, by the way, and they're still doing it today worldwide. Migrant workers are constantly shipped to Hanford, United States. Workers are fired once they have heat stroke. Well, it's not heat stroke, it's radiation poisoning. Fukushima Radioactive worker dies when preparing a cover for unit number 3. Remember the cover for reactor 3? These are not scientists or academics. This is built off-site and laid over reactor 3 to manipulate people, right? To pretend that they're getting the fuel out of the pool. And that's what they done in 2021. Was they pretended they got all the fuel finally out of reactor 3, they said. And how are you going to do it when reactor 3 was gone on day 5? And when I say gone, brother, I mean gone. It went poof. Fukushima decontamination is proven futile. The truth is, scientifically, they can never clean it up. It's impossible. They picked up 30 million one-ton bags and just gave up because everybody else did. And so people stopped paying attention. They started hacking the bags open and growing food in it. In the nuclear wasteland itself, within sight of the nuclear meltdowns. Fukushima Daiichi worker think all reactors will be in crisis after a major earthquake, another earthquake, aftershock. We don't have enough people to settle down reactor 4 fuel pool. The story came out May 27, 2012. But clearly reactor 4 fuel pool, as I showed you multiple times tonight, is gone. And not like somewhere else, but melted down, gone, detonated. Yeah, bear with me. Just trying to bring up some pictures that are not so insane. I've got, must be close to 12,000 of these pictures now. Just bear with me. These are some of my favorite pictures here. Or pictures like this. because Japan picked up 30 million one-ton bags, it's hard to appreciate the significance of that statement. People are abandoned, thrown away. Disasters occurring every day at the Fukushima site. TEPCO chairman, if the crisis worsened, it's difficult legally to order workers to stay at the Fukushima plant when all of them could die. We can't give them an order that might lead them to their deaths. But by telling people to stay in their own homes, that's the same thing. By grown food in the nuclear wasteland without never stopping it and shipping it, that's genocide on a scale we've never seen before. At least 1 billion people in the last decade alone have been significantly poisoned by radiation. And the rest of them have been poisoned by radiation, right? But significant poisoning is to at least 1 billion people worldwide. They grow 1 billion pounds of rice in each of these prefectures. 14 prefectures, the food was banned for a decade by 55 countries. They still grew it though. They still shipped it worldwide, particularly Canada. Canada removed all restrictions. After the first 93 days, there was no more restrictions for Canada. Everybody else had bans. Canada's like, no, ship it all here. It was a vicious... The nuclear industry in Canada, the subhuman nuclear industry in Canada is humanity's worst enemy, right? The Canadian nuclear industry is so out of control that everybody in Canada is sick because of them. The deeper they check underneath the Fukushima plant, the higher contamination levels get. In Southern California, it was 14 million atoms of iodine-131, which is a very short half-life. And a single bed of kelp off Southern California. And from the damaged Japanese reactors. Unprecedented spike, 1,500 atoms of radioactive sulfur per meter, per cubic meter, which is the sulfur peroxide hydrogen buckyballs. These are super hot particles created by spraying salt water on the enormous temperatures. Fukushima releases so great that the radioactive aerosols in Washington were 100,000 times normal. There is no normal. There's weapons fallout left over. But then all nuclear plants are hemorrhaging radiation anyway from the fuel pools, right? It's just your Geiger counters can only find a tiny, like one in every 600 pulses from man-made anthropogenic stuff is picked up by the very high concentrations of hot particles, including plutonium and americium. But then Arnie Gunnarsson also tells you that the fuel pools, they got the fuel out of the pools, when it's clearly that can't be true. And he made the racks for the fuel pool assemblies. Radioactive xenon-133 in Washington at 450,000 times above detection levels, which meant you're going to have similar uranium, plutonium, americium, neptunium, strontium, etc., in the same sample. Because they can find the xenon-133, they can find the iodine-131, they can find the cesium-137, and then they do a mathematical extrapolations. Astounding levels of radiation measured in the United States from Fukushima. 500,000 times normal level. We've never seen anything like it, or even close to it. The concentrations went up and up and up every single day. Because it was a continuous plume, right? There was a continuous plume. There was a continuous plume. And so this model is based on 16 days of radioactive fallout by France. It's a continuous plume. The plume never stops coming out. Let me do this again. I want you to think of a snowstorm that starts in Japan at Fukushima. The snowstorm after 9 days looks like this. And after 16 days, the snowstorm covers the whole planet. It never stops snowing. The snow never melts. Now take the word snow away and put in the word radiation, fallout, and then multiply it by 600. And now you're getting close to what actually happened. So this has assaulted every species, a sterilized majority of them, particularly the vulnerable, the birds, the bees, the insects. It decimated the food chain, the phytoplankton, the zooplankton, the bases of the food chain, the oxygen chain, the carbon sequestering chain. And the cover-up is belligerence. The way they're treating you and the planet is pure belligerence. It's pure belligerence. Excuse me, my goodness. The only way to describe it is belligerence, right? They have the utmost contempt for you. They have nothing but contempt for you. It's stunning how belligerent they are to everybody. Nuclear scientists see themselves as predators, coward predators, mind you, but predators. The journalist's job is, when you hear from the journalist, not the scientist, right? They have a relationship to hoodwink you. Whatever the journalist tells you is the official cover story. Their job is to cut your throat for their boss. And a lot of these people they're handpicked because they're missing DNA, they're missing their chromosomes of a normal human. And they're incapable of caring. These people are animals. Well, animals are good compared to these people. These people are wolves. And the universities have put them on a pedestal, and they think that they're important. They think they have the moral compass. Nobody's ever challenged them. And if you challenge any of these people, they will defecate in their pants. They'll reach down in their pants and they'll spread it all over their body so you won't look at them. And they have lots of money. They'll go home, clean up, put on clean clothes, and they'll come out and pretend they're human again. They're not human, what they're doing. They have proved that they cannot be trusted under any circumstances. Right? You cannot trust these people. A scientist and a journalist are the least trustworthy creatures we've ever come across. They're the most dangerous creatures on this planet. History will show that vampires are real. They're called scientists and journalists. I'm going to close the poll up. That's it for tonight. I hope everybody has a great weekend. Would the world be horrified if it knew all nuclear plants are encircled by toxic radioactive farms? Of course they would be. Why would anybody vote no? And people would vote no as the nuclear industry, right? I'm still messed up from last week. I lost my oldest brother. It was a terrible experience, right? Constant flashbacks. We sat there for 30 hours waiting for him to pass away. And I don't know if I'll ever get over that. I'm sure I will at some point, but That was pretty rough. And they hacked all my equipment. Have no rest since then. Nothing. I can't barely function, right? Hopefully next week I'll get some normality back in my life. I know it's going to be a long time before it gets over this one. It is what it is, right? You can't. People go through it all the time. I get that. And I have two brothers with dementia and a sister with Alzheimer's, and they put her in a home too on Friday too, right? So Friday was a brutal day. Or Thursday, and then Friday, my oldest brother finally passed away. And my sister the day before is way away from me, so I'm going to try the weekend. I don't have my vehicle working yet. It won't be back up and running till Tuesday. I want to get down and see her, though, when I get that fixed, right? Because they'll get her back here when the place opens up, but just the thought of her being down there by herself in a strange place with nothing but strangers everywhere is just... Bless her heart, she doesn't know anything, right? And so now I only got one brother with dementia and a sister with Alzheimer's. I used to have two. And that's because of Fukushima. Dementia and Alzheimer's doesn't run in my family. That's the Fukushima effect. And I talked to some of the people last year down at the hospital, and the explosion of young people too with dementia and Alzheimer's. An explosion. They're like 40 and 50-year-olds all over the place. There's one little community here where we had 5 in 1 week drop dead of heart attacks in their 40s. Just dropped dead in this little tiny community. When normally you get like one person dies every 3 or 4 months. You had, it was 5 actually in a single week that dropped dead. And all of them were considered healthy. 2 of them were out for a walk, like they always do. And they're big seafood eaters too, right? What we see happening is just so, like, it's personal. It's very personal to me because I'm experiencing it a little more than the average person would, right? The effects of it. Just makes me hate the nuclear industry just many times. And I really hate this industry. It's hard to hate them any more than I thought it would be, but it's not. Alrighty, hugs for everybody. See everybody on Sunday, unless some breaking news on the weekend. We're going to end it with one of James Luce's songs. His early songs. He's got a bunch of songs on his site, anti-nuclear songs. I encourage people to download it, convert it to MP3, and put it on your children's phones. And because there's a lot of different genres he's got through it. Here's one of them. He creates with AI, but it's fantastic results. This is an early song he done. This one is really good too. Have a great night, everybody. We'll see everybody on the next Nightmare show, which is on Sunday. That's the problem with these shows, is it's nothing but facts, and facts are pretty rough.
In the Tokyo Bureau, swirling smoke and neon beams. Chicago division, fueled by heated dreams. Calm down, Charlie calls in, voice smooth as silk. Says, Dana, you're dreaming, don't cry over spilt milk. On Dana Durnford show, the chatter's turning wild, but Charlie shoots it down with that cool cat style. Unit 3's no killer, no harm to see life. He chuckles in the static, cuts through the strife. Oh, calm down, Charlie, with his nuclear charm. He says starfish are just fine, there's no alarm. His words dance on airwaves with a confident glow. Calm down, Charlie steals the whole radio show. With a snap and a grin, Charlie's voice so clear scatters the dread, dispels all the fear. Mux didn't hurt, he croons with a sigh. Science is for thinkers, not a whim or lie. Though Dana and the crowd may shout and roar, Charlie's unfazed, he's heard it all before. His swinging rationale, like a soothing song, says, hold on to logic, we gotta stay strong. Oh, calm down, Charlie, with his nuclear charm. He says starfish are just fine, there's no alarm. His words dance on airwaves with a confident glow. Calm down, Charlie steals the whole radio show.